Zep. So I think I'm going to break this video into 3 different pieces. So that'll be, doing the front end and also doing the dash, as I was showing you guys. Got this gauge cluster out, and I'm also going to be working on the TKO600 in here. Needs new synchronizers, and I'm also changing the 5th gear from a 0.64 to a 0.82. So 0.64 is, pretty high geared, which is good for cruising, but this is kind of more my road race car. So, gonna change that out and update those synchros. So that's gonna be what I'm working on. And this one is the actual Tremec. So I'm gonna hop underneath here. Decent amount of room, nothing like, having the lift and a transmission jack, but we can definitely get this out of there. So got to start with the drive shaft, pull that out, and then, basically cross member, get the shifter out of there and do these, different steps. So pretty straightforward. I don't have to take the bell housing off or anything, which can be more of a pain. So you have to get those bolts kind of surrounding that are, real tight to the firewall. So just those 4 bolts that, put it into the actual bell housing, and then this thing should slide out of there. So I'm gonna get to work. I'll probably kind of put you guys on the time lapse underneath there if I can, squeeze it under there. So should be a little project, but gonna be nice to have 3rd gear working again, and that updated 5th gear should be sweet. And one thing I will be changing also over to 373s to complement that 5th gear, and also I think it's gonna be a little better for this big block. Definitely kind of tight down here, but you can see up right there, I'm pretty sure my finger's on it correctly, those are the big 4 bolts that I need to get off. And obviously need to take this cross member off. I got the drive shaft out and a plug in it, and need to take the speedometer cable off. And I'm gonna be using this neutral safety switch and also the electric speedometer output for the auto meter. So that's nice because basically if you change your wheel and tire size, it's easy to recalibrate. So if you have a, mechanical one like I have, you have to basically change the speedometer gear on the end of the cable, which is a pain, and I don't think it's ever truly that accurate, given that there is, a little bit of variation in terms of tires and, wheel sizes and everything like that. So to calibrate the actual electric speedometer, you just drive like a known 2-mile distance, and then it automatically calibrates based on the signals from the speed sensor in the transmission. So I'm going to take this cross member out and then loosen those bolts up there, and take all this wiring off, and then I'll probably do a little video of me pulling this out. It's definitely pretty heavy, so not the best thing to do on your own, but it's manageable if you're young and strong like me. Tonight's frickin' mission accomplished. So got this thing out as usual, forgot to film, but it was kind of a process to get it out of there on my own. Filming would have been a pain, but pretty easy to take one of these out. It's basically the same as taking a Muncie out or a 4-speed, just the cross member, a few bolts, obviously a drive shaft and shifter has to come off. So we got it out of there, and I'm gonna transport this thing home in my little Acura and take it apart at the garage where the Nova is. We have all the tools to take it apart there, and yeah, we'll be able to use, so basically this is the speedometer provision, and this is the neutral safety switch. It also has like the backup light, little plug there. So I need to get basically they make a little thing to plug this hole right here where the speedometer went in. And it also, this thing kind of leaks, so I'm hoping, resealing it up should help to mitigate that. We'll see. I know it goes through a lot of torque, so maybe it kind of ends up leaking a little bit. But I don't believe they use any gaskets, which I think might be part of the issue. Maybe I'll try and make a gasket out of some gasket material, but I know the tolerances on these are probably pretty tight, so I don't know if I want to mess with that. But yeah, I'll see you guys at home for this part of the video, and I might transition to another part depending on when all my stuff comes in to do the rest of the project. So glad to have this out. Definitely a little bit of a challenge when you don't have a lift, but we got it done. All right, the Tremec made it home to here at my parents' place. So definitely a big item to have in the back of your car. And I did take my welder, taking it back to my other shop. So it should be nice to get to work on some projects on the Camaro. And, you know, Stu is still here. It's getting maybe put on the back burner a little bit. But the plan now is, you know, to watch some videos and get familiar with how these come apart. Sorry about this beeping. And then, you know, take it apart really methodically and, you know, make sure to inspect everything and make sure it looks good. And then we'll be putting it back together with those new carbon synchros. I got them here, and there's a couple upgrades that they do to the shifter. So I'm probably gonna head back home to my, you know, other shop where I live there, and maybe work on this next weekend. So it should be super nice. It does leak, you know, a decent amount from this area here. So I'm hoping with some fresh sealant, I can get that to go away. So gonna be a project, but it's gonna be super nice to have it all rebuilt. Got the old Tremec onto a new table with some plastic on it, and got the shifter off, and also this you know, shift selector cover off. And what I'm gonna do is pound out these roll pins, and then once those are undone, then you can start taking off this top case or the top cover. It's basically kind of like a top loader transmission, since it is a Ford design. It's like a TR3550, I think is what they usually were, with some beefed up internals is what made the TKO what it is. And then you take these apart, and then you can pull this rear tail housing off. You have to be real careful. There's some O-rings up here. So I'll throw you guys on the time lapse. I definitely need to review this YouTube video I had or found on the disassembly, just to make sure I'm following the correct path and don't screw anything up, but pretty straightforward for the most part. Got it all taken apart, and you know what I noticed is some of the synchronizers, they grab better than others, definitely in that third gear. Something's going on with that synchro. It doesn't seem to be too tight on there, so I think that's part of the problem. And also potentially that the hub is bad. Once I get it all taken apart, I'll show you, you know, kind of what's going on with it, but I got some good pictures. I'm gonna send it to the people I've been working with at Liberty Gears and see what they think, and see whether you know, they recommend getting a new third gear, or, you know, hopefully it isn't anything too monumental. And I am going to be taking all the gears off of this shaft, and I'm not going to use the speedometer gear, since I'm using that Hall effect, or not Hall effect sensor, there's another word for it, but you're using this instead. Also I need to figure out if I have to shim it, since I'm using that new main shaft, or if I can just use the existing shims. So definitely some work to do. And it's weird, the fifth gear, can't remember if I mentioned it, but the fifth gear on this is actually broken right there. Not sure what happened. The fifth gear, that's like, you know, on its own is fine. The main shaft definitely has that little chip in it, kind of a bummer. I was hoping to sell that or something, get some money out of it, but might not work out that way. And I'll probably, you know, pretty much cap it off for the night here. And then once I, you know, get some recommendations over the week, and, you know, potentially buy some more parts, then we'll tag up and we'll get this all taken apart. All right, so I pretty much have this whole main shaft apart, other than a couple gears here. So I need to, or I have a couple pairs of snap ring pliers on the way. I've been struggling with this one. We have some, you know, cheap overseas ones, but not really good enough to get this heavier clip out of here. So I got some good ones on the way. Rest of it comes apart pretty easily. And I've been looking at, so, you know, with this kit I bought, got a bunch of new O-rings for here. And also you can see all these, I think they're kind of like shift pads. Some of them are really freaking worn out. Like this one's pretty much almost gone. So the new ones that I got are brass, and they're in a lot nicer shape, so it should be a good upgrade, and probably will improve the performance quite a bit. Same with these synchronizers. Can't remember if I showed you, but once I get, you know, the new pliers in here, you know, I'll basically get this all disassembled and make a time lapse of me putting everything back onto the new one. So, you know, everything looks pretty good. I just noticed that I'm gonna have to get this on to this one somehow. So I think I gotta take this off as well. On this side, I think these have kind of like a ball that hold them in place or something. And this one's gonna be, I won't need this speedometer gear. I'll be using, you know, as I mentioned, basically this sensor, which is like a, you know, kind of counts the teeth on here and calibrates to the new electronic speedometer that I have in the Camaro. So should be really nice. And then I do have to take, I want to take all this apart and kind of clean it all up so I'm nice and fresh. And I did buy, kind of spent some money and bought the actual Tremec manual transmission fluid. I figure if I'm going to be doing this, do it once and do it right and get the correct fluid that's kind of, you know, made for this transmission. So I'll probably run it, you know, 1,000, 2,000 miles and then flush it and, you know, fill it back up with some new fluid just so I'm double sure that everything's looking good in here and, you know, we got good fluid for the long term. So, you know, you think you have everything that you need, but I think there's always, you know, as any hot rodder knows, there's always something else that you need sometimes. So we're making it happen and we're going to get it done as soon as we can. Project updates. So I took apart the rest of this main case. So I wanted to kind of clean out as much as I could, everything in here, mainly the magnet. It had a lot of stuff on it. So got it mostly cleaned. It's hard to get everything off of there, given that it's a magnet, obviously. And to do that, I had to take this reverse assembly out. So, you know, with needle bearings, kind of the trick is to use some grease, and then, you know, obviously when you take it apart, they just kind of all fall out. They're basically a bunch of little ball bearings that are cylinders or cylindrical bearings. And then when you put it back together, you know, put some grease in there and then just pack them in there and make sure not to lose any. And obviously, if you're doing a transmission that's not well documented, make sure to really be careful as you take it apart so you know how to put it back together. This one's obviously pretty well documented, so I, you know, can reference things as needed. So now I'm going to put this back together. And one thing with the TKO600, it actually has this front like seal slash, you know, where the brace for the cluster gear sits. Cluster gear bearing. So you kind of have to push that out, you know, get it out as much as you can, and then you can take this out from the top. So kind of a trick there. It can't, you know, some people might show you that it can come back and through and then out without pushing this forward at all, this thing. But turns out that you have to push that forward to get it out and make it clear. So I'm going to put this all back together for this part. And then probably call it a night. I also made upgrades, so I changed this rear seal. It kind of leaked. Put my speedometer, you know, cover on there, speedometer gear cover on there, and also changed the shift finger. And then the kit I bought came with a bronze, you know, where the shifter goes in here. So pretty nice. Should be pretty, or it should be a good upgrade. And then for this, I don't think I'm going to use the neutral safety switch. The wiring is a lot more like a lesser gauge than what is in the car. And I don't know if it's really necessary, so I'll probably just get a plug and put it in here instead of having that neutral safety switch. Maybe try and return it. But I'm gonna get to putting this back together, and then I'll show you guys, more once I kind of, get more parts in, and also start taking apart this main shaft. I think that's gonna be the next rendezvous point, so we'll see you there. All right, so these snap ring pliers were effective at getting these snap rings off of here. So I got, the rest of the main shaft disassembled, and I got the new one here. Just need to clean it up and put it back together. And what I did is kind of, lubed up these synchro rings for getting them ready for reassembly. And I have been referencing this video, down that I'll put in the description, kind of visualizing how you take this thing apart, and also going to use it to put it back together. So pretty straightforward for the most part, but you definitely want a good pair of pliers, to get this apart. And I think this pair of pliers is probably the one you want, the one that has a little, the jaws kind of go downward, helps you get into those tight areas. So I did buy just a couple more parts. I got that 3rd and 4th slider assembly. I think it's called the synchronizer hub. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but also got a new boot. This one kind of got torn up, after installing and, taking the transmission out, kind of ends up getting damaged. So those new parts should be nice, kind of make it nice and fresh. And I am going to paint the transmission black and green to kind of go with the car. So it should be pretty fresh and look good underneath there. And gonna try and get it together this weekend. So I might try and throw you on the time lapse once I get everything kind of figured out in my head, and get an idea of where everything goes. So we'll get this thing back together, and it should be nice to get it shifting good again. We got the frickin' rig back together. So looks good for the most part. One thing I did realize kind of later on, I took this apart, this 3.4 that I bought, to clean off all the preservative that's on there. I think they put some real heavy grease on there to preserve it in a warehouse. But with these, they're matched basically, so there's like a little grind mark on, I think it's on the other side. I can't really show you on this one, but it's a grind mark between this part of it and this part. And basically, if you do take it apart, you want to make sure that the grind marks get into the same spot. So full transparency, I did accidentally, when I was putting this one on, it didn't need to come apart, but I was trying to pull it back off and it all came apart. So then I freaking put it back together, and I didn't realize until I was putting this one on, that these grind marks have to be, in the same spot. I don't think it's like critical, but if you are working on a transmission like that, or like this one, these sliders are basically matched in between the two parts. I'm not really sure how you can explain the anatomy, but there's basically two parts you could see that move separate of one another, so it can slide onto each specific gear. So I think it's going to be okay. I guess time will tell, just trying to be transparent. So if you are doing this, make sure to get those lined up. And this one up here, it was kind of hard to put on, so I'm hoping it is all right. It was hard to get it on the splines, which it's kind of easy on the one that I took off. So I got it seated and everything. I think it's going to be okay. I think it probably loosens up over time, as it gets load on it. So long story short, this is ready to go into here, and I've been kind of scoping out how this is supposed to go together. So I think the next step is to get that in here, and then I can put the 5th gear on. And I'd like to put it all together and check the backlash of everything, especially this counter shaft once the tail housing is on, just to make sure it's within spec. Use a dial indicator and make sure we're looking good there. So lots of work going on. Definitely sometimes you feel over your head working on some of these more in-depth mechanical devices, but I think it'll come together and work fine. All right, so I got everything back together, and now I cleaned this surface real well. Same with the top cover, and I'm going to be using this anaerobic gasket maker. So this is what they use from the factory. If you watch that video I have in the description, you'd see the same that they're using the anaerobic. So I'm going to run a bead on here, put this top cover on here, then put some grease on these O-rings. These O-rings seem to had gone bad on the other one, so now that I have new ones, should be mint. And put this on there, and then tail shaft goes on, and then once this is all together, I'll put the tail shaft on with sealant as well, and then you know, make sure it spins nicely and doesn't really have any end play in it. Then you got to put, you know, the shift fingers on and put the covers on and everything else, and also put some sealant under here after you're confident that it's shimmed correctly. So we're making progress. We should have this done, you know, pretty shortly, as long as everything goes smoothly. So making progress. So this bad boy is pretty much back together. So, you know, anaerobic on all these other surfaces. Got it looking a lot better than it did from the factory. You know, a lot less sealant everywhere. And I was kind of having some trouble getting it shifting. So what I did is kind of, you know, made a shifter here, and I got it working. So this is first, working good. You can see the fingers here, or the, you know, shift rails. And then here's the second. The second's working good. Third, good to go. Fourth, and my new fifth gear, 0.18 now. Boom, boom, boom. Good to go. And then obviously reverse. There you go. You can feel it going backwards. So we're good to go. I just need to put the plate back on here. And, you know, I'm trying to make it so I don't have, you know, too much end play or too much, what's the word for it? You know, where it goes back and forth, and it feels okay, but I might double check and try some different shimming. And then got to seal the shifter up. As I said, put this on, and then it's pretty much back together for the most part. Back over here at frickin' Pretty Good Daddy headquarters. So we got the Tremec hung up here. Basically, I'm going to be painting it black, or hitting it with etching primer, then painting it black, and then doing some green accents on here. So shifter's going green, and these plates are going green. So it should be a little nice contrast. You know, you'll never see it, but it should be kind of cool to have that under the car whenever you take it out. So I got this, you know, masked as much as I really need to. Then we'll spray it, and then spray with etching primer, let it sit for a little bit and kick, and then hit it with that black paint. So it should be really nice, and put you guys on the time lapse to watch this get done. All right, got the frickin' thing painted, so it came out really good. And I, instead of doing green up here, I just painted it black. I should have done it when I was spraying it. I got, you know, I kind of sprayed it when it was not wet anymore, so, you know, got a little overspray, and it isn't as glossy as it should be. So I tried to, you know, paint or mask this off to paint it green, but when I pulled the tape, you know, there's some silicone here, and it kind of started pulling the paint off, so I just went with black. But it looks really nice, you know, came out good. So gonna get some longer bolts for this mount to get it some more engagement on here, get some grade 8 bolts so it's nice and secure, and then get the guy back in there. So you know, I'll show you guys putting that in there, and then this job should be pretty much done. All right, so I got a new clutch fork for this thing. The old one was kind of broken, can't remember if I mentioned that. And I got a plug in here for now. You know, I don't want to damage that when I put this in here. And I got the car jacked up a little bit more, and I also got, you know, all my wiring. It's just a one wire for the speedometer, and then the wire for, you know, the reverse lights kind of dialed in. So I'm gonna be putting this back on. The clutch fork, as I said, was damaged, so I'm gonna throw that back in there, and then we should be ready to put this transmission in. My buddy is coming to help me because this thing is kind of a unit. So hopefully when I, you know, get the camera back out, it'll be in there. What is up? So welcome to the new shop. The old Pretty Good Daddy headquarters sign is up there. You know, I got the chance to drive this thing about 200 miles before the air cleaner stud went into the engine. Story for another day, probably another video. You can see I got my heads and everything here, everything all organized, and motor's gonna have to come out. But the Tremec came out perfect, shifts, flawlessly, for the time that I got to drive it. It seems like those carbon synchros definitely work a little bit better than the bronze ones or brass ones, whichever one it is. And I think the transmission fluid helped a little bit, and also that fifth is really nice. Definitely need some longer gears in the back, but haven't gotten around to that. Got to get this thing running again. So thank you all for watching, and we'll frickin' see you in the next one. Hey, thanks for stopping in at the Phantom Motorsports YouTube channel. If you like what you saw, give me a big thumbs up, and hopefully you're leaving with a bigger smile than you came in with.